Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. I thought I would share my reactions to PlayStation's 2023 showcase, their first one since September 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Lots of games in this showcase. I'm not going to comment on all of them. There's plenty of people that'll do that for you. I thought that I would highlight the ones that stood out to me personally and also comment on the moral, philosophical, or spiritual themes that some of the games seem to be ready to play around with in their stories, their settings, and things like that. You know, all storytelling really is ripe for moral messaging from the creators. We know that. We've seen that in plenty of works out there. So I'm going to share what messages I speculate, anyway, a number of creators might be assuming or hoping you will agree with or be influenced by. Starting with fair games. This one looks like an online action shooter of some kind. Definitely not my style of game based on what I'm seeing. But the messaging, the theming caught my eye. It's a premise where in the future too much wealth is owned by too few people, so we as the players are going to steal it. And the tagline for the game is "Take it till you make it." So of course, just a low-hanging fruit is the liberal redistribution of wealth. So there's certainly a political ideology kind of being played with there, but I think it also resonates with our natural desire for quick, easy, brute force solutions to big problems and legitimate problems. Our tendency is to envy the wealthy and want to quickly and easily obtain the same wealth. This gamifies that natural inclination as far as what I'm seeing here in fair games. I'm wondering, though, if it'll also feed the unfair assumption that because someone is wealthy, they are immoral and deserve to lose their wealth. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like how the gameplay plays out, what you're trying to do. Is there going to be any complexity? Is there going to be any room for, okay, yes, these guys are rich and evil and they don't deserve on a cosmic moral level to have all the financial success that they're having, so we're going to take some of that. But is there at some point going to be something of our actions that is morally called into question? Is there going to be any moral complexity there? And that's kind of what I would be interested in seeing. But that's fair games. Immortals of Aveum. This one's coming July 20th. I didn't take note of release dates for all of these, so sorry if that's what you were expecting. But Immortals of Aveum, this Aveum is one that I've kind of known about, had my eye on. I'm very curious about this game. Spectacular action and spectacular visual designs. It looks like a first-person wizard shooter or something, doing lots of magical spells and hand gestures and stuff to pull off certain effects. There are not just damaging effects, but also mechanical spell effects that manipulate, pushing or pulling your enemy, things like that. But it seems exclusively combat-focused, and that's the one thing that makes me think it might not be for me. If it's too shooty, too actiony, I'll either be frustrated because I suck at action games, or bored because it's just kind of one-note activity. But if there are enough systems in the game that I find interesting, if there are enough difficulty mitigators so that a crappy player like me could enjoy a fun world like this one looks to be, then it could be a great fit for me. But there's a lot that remains to be seen about Immortals of Aveum, and that one's coming July 20th. Next up, the Talos Principle 2. Now, I did not play the first one. I thought about it. It looked like it was going to be really playing with some interesting, specifically theological themes, but I just never got around to it, in part because I just tend to hate most puzzle games. But this trailer and the dialogue being spoken over it really got my interest. There's this phraseology of this new world awaiting the player that's full of signs and wonders. That tends to be a phrase associated with the Bible. Let's see, what else do they say? Think of the world we could build if we believed in ourselves. If we truly believed in what it means to be sentient, which, you could almost swap human in there, but you're playing as an android, so they're not going to say human. If we truly believed what it means to be sentient, to face the universe without fear or delusion. Okay, well, what delusions are we talking about? So they're going to be making some kind of truth claims here that maybe are contested because people tend to be deluded by them. Imagine vast cities full of light and life, great towers rising toward the sky. So much would be possible if we believed, if we still have faith. Well, faith in what? Believed in what? Well, if you look at the beginning there, I think you get a clue. Based on some quick research, since I dislike most puzzle games and haven't played the first Talos Principle, the first game is apparently about you as a robot interacting with Elohim, your creator. That's the Hebrew name that's often used for God or Lord, I believe, in the Old Testament, but it's not exclusively used of the God of the Bible. It's used of other spiritual beings, I think even other, like, lords in the political human ruler sense. Yahweh would be the exclusive proper noun name of God in the Bible. And so this is a different Hebrew word here, so it's not necessarily right on the nose referring to Yahweh. But, you know, Elohim is your creator in the first game, evidently, and you have the potential to gain sentience. And there are multiple references to biblical phrases, but whether the game is meant to be a criticism, I'm talking about the first game still, whether the game is meant to be a criticism of the biblical concept of God, I will leave to the evaluation of those who have played it. I don't have any personal experience with it. But I wanted to do just a little bit of research to understand maybe what the second game was going to be about. This game, Talos Principle 2, intended or not, seems to have parallels to the Tower of Babel, described in Genesis 11. Babel was a combined human effort intended to showcase the glory of humans by building a tower that reached high into the sky. And this trailer aims to inspire someone, probably the player, to pursue a future in which multiple towers rise toward the sky. A future that's possible with faith, but faith in what? Well, faith in ourselves is what this the idea is behind the dialogue here. So I'm wondering, will the philosophical commentary divert in the second game? Will it divert its course compared to the original, or remain the same? Will this be a not-so-subtle criticism of Yahweh, or a cautionary tale about the hubris of humanism? I'd be surprised if it was the latter, but, you know, I hate most puzzle games, so if you play Talos Principle 2, I would love for you to let me know. Next up, probably one of the games that most has me interested of those that were shown was Final Fantasy XVI. This is a pretty significant game in that while exclusives to both Sony's console and Microsoft's console are a big topic of discussion lately, this one is kind of functionally exclusive to the PS5. I think they did a deal, but I mean, there's a lot of Japanese or Asian games of various kinds that don't make their way to Xbox for whatever reason, and so they're almost exclusives by default. And I think this is a little more than that. I think they made a deal with Sony, but anyway, this one's not coming to Xbox. And Final Fantasy XVI is finally giving over, it looks like, to a full-on action combat system. Final Fantasy XV was close, but it was still kind of just a hold one button mostly in combat is what you're doing. And I think that 16 could very well work better for me than the other halfway points that these games have been between turn-based and action. I feel like ever since they introduced the active time battle system, they have been moving to this. And I think I would have preferred if they just would have... I mean, honestly, I would have preferred turn-based. I don't even like the active time battle system. And the more they were playing with that, depending on it, modifying it, doing different things with real-time stuff, I'm just like, you know, go back to turn-based or turn it into an action RPG. But this halfway point that makes me feel like I have to make decisions really quickly, I don't like that, you know. Make it instinctual and just fast and just button mashy, or give me all the time I want to make my decisions. But anyway, Final Fantasy XVI has these Western D&D aesthetics that I always love, and a full-on return to fantasy instead of being mostly modern or mostly sci-fi, you know. I am going to try hard to rent this for my review instead of buying it without trying. But right now, I'm fighting off some hype because it looks pretty great. Some interesting thematic stuff going on, and it was hard to make out all of the dialogue because of the way they mixed this trailer, so I'll do my best. I might get some of this wrong, but one character says, "We don't need your salvation. We'll save ourselves, and we'll do it on our own terms." Now, he's talking, I believe, to another human. It's not completely 100% clear, but that seems to be the context. But usually the idea of salvation is talked about in a spiritual or religious sense and stuff, and I think that even if this is a story about independence from overpowering humans that are dominating, the underdog. I think that this sentiment of saving ourselves and doing it on our own terms is the underlying kind of attitude of those who reject Yahweh, those who reject Jesus, is they don't want to depend on that. They don't want salvation on God's terms. They just want to step into the afterlife believing that they are entitled to good at that point on their own terms, So it's interesting just to take note of that. I'm wondering where philosophically and thematically it's going to go. The dominants, I believe, I could be wrong, are the name of like the big summon monsters that are classically part of the series. I could be wrong, but assuming that's the case for a moment, there's some dialogue that I think said, what are the dominants? And then the response is, we are but, and I could be wrong, this is what it sounded like, we are but mighty maggots of God. I don't even know what they would exactly mean by that. That felt like like maybe not the best translation of what they were originally trying to express. Are they maggots compared to God? Are they maggots that like are sent by God? What do you mean by of God? Mighty maggots? I don't know. So I'll try to figure that out when I try the game out. And then it's got the statement on the screen at one point, fate will fall. So dealing with ideas of fate, that's very common in a lot of Japanese RPGs. So there's lots of philosophical terms. There's a message of freedom and independence, but how that message actually plays out in detail is really still unclear. Maybe the main message and theme is about freedom from human institutions rather than freedom from God. I don't know. But I think it's worth asking, do people confuse and conflate the two? When they are rejecting quote unquote religion, are they actually rejecting the treatment of religious people toward them? I think that can often be the case. And so they will end up kind of like putting the two together and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And do we as Christians enable that happening by appropriating an attitude of having God's authority when we are talking to other people, whether that's non-believers or to other Christians? Sometimes Christians can really get this declarative, bossy attitude where they seem to be a self-styled prophet of some kind, and are in their attitude, though not in their words, appropriating God's authority for themselves, when really they should be taking a much more humble, compassionate attitude that urges people, pleads with people, but doesn't talk down to people and condemn people. When we don't do all that we can as Christians to be winsome as we share the truth, we unnecessarily create a stumbling block for others who might otherwise move toward God. And that they end up then mixing together the messenger with the message, or the messenger with the truth behind them. As Christians, it should always be our goal that never happens, that we be so loving, so patient, so gracious, that if people choose to reject God after interacting with us, not 1 ounce of that has anything to do with their interaction with us. So anyway, those are some things that come to mind as I look at what they showed us of Final Fantasy 16. Moving on, Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now, I am a fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I've played well more than half. I don't know if I would say most, but I think I was out after halfway through Assassin's Creed 3, but all the Ezio trilogy I played, the first game I played, and the open world ones I've played, that's where I got back in, was Origins. Anyway, but my interest has been waning again as I've been playing through Valhalla. I think I'll probably finish it, but it might be slow going. Excuse me. But I like the promise that seems to be given in this trailer of more assassination focus in the gameplay and supporting gameplay systems, almost like they're taking one step in the direction of Hitman gameplay. The setting for this game, Assassin's Creed Mirage, is Baghdad in a period that's known as the Golden Age of Islam. And I wonder, Assassin's Creed has established in its lore that Jesus accomplished his miracles by wearing what is basically an alien space robe, flying in the face while they do that of historical consensus even among atheistic and agnostic Bible scholars. So this is really a ridiculous hypothesis, according to any credible historian. Will they be as bold when it comes to Islam and say that the Prophet Muhammad was also not who and what his followers claim him to be? One by one, the Assassin's Creed franchise, as much as I love it, has established the claims of Judaism, Christianity, Greek, and Norse mythology to all be false, with aliens as the common reality behind all of them. Will they do the same to Islam? Now, I'm not rooting for them to do it, but I've got major doubts that they will. In the cultural climate we've been living in for the last 20 years, I'd be shocked and at least appreciate their boldness and consistency if they did. Now, if they don't, Christians, that is not the time to make a stink and say, see, they're getting special treatment, da-da-da-da, and put on our martyr faces and whatever. I think we can look for ways to verbally make the observation in a gentle, tactful way, but the internet does not need a reinforced impression of Christians as angry and entitled, and we shouldn't be expecting, we should expect that Islam is going to be treated with kid gloves and Christianity not, or A, B, and C worldview treated with kid gloves and Christianity not. That's what we're told to expect in Scripture. And if Islam does get the same ridiculous alien hypothesis applied to it, I think we can join them in pointing out the absurdity of alien theories compared to the far more reliable evidences of history. We don't have to defend the claims of Islam, but we can say, listen, this is just, it's a fun game, cool, imaginative stuff, but it's like totally off base from history. In fact, I think that could open a doorway to a reconsideration of the claims of Jesus based on the almost overwhelming historical evidence that makes his divine nature the most likely explanation of the events surrounding his life. History is our great ally as Christians, and pointing to it increasingly reveals the truth about Jesus and reveals the truth about the claims of Islam. All right, moving on. Dragon's Dogma 2. Not much to say about this one. No release date for it. Plenty of time looks like I'll have to keep trying to like the first one. Really love Monster Hunter World, and I love that this game is, very likely going to be playing that up even more since Monster Hunter World was such a success. It already had some Monster Hunter in its DNA, certainly, and it's the same publisher. But the first game, there's no recommended quest levels or quest order and limited fast travel, so that meant that if I travel around the world and go to the bother of trying out this one quest and I realize, I think I am underleveled for this, then getting there was a little bit of a pain, getting back is a pain. I just want some quality of life stuff, I just want some basic, like, hey, recommended level, or just like a quest order. They get, this one's more difficult than this one. Just something simple like that, so I'm not wasting my time. And if you add to that better fast travel options, more available fast travel options, that would go a long, long way to maybe really sucking me into Dragon's Dogma 2, but we'll have to see what happens. Arizona Sunshine 2. Now, I'm not interested in VR or most shooters or most zombie games, but the devs at the head of Vertigo Games, who make Arizona Sunshine, are still Christians as far as I know. They're not making games for the Christian market, they're making it for the mainstream market, but I like keeping tabs on them, and I really appreciate that they seem to be doing high-quality work in the mainstream gaming space, operating as Christians. I'm not suspecting any serious themes in Arizona Sunshine 2. In the trailer, the main character is confessing to a priest. That's kind of the premise of the trailer itself, but that's such a common device in fiction, I'm not reading into it, and it's played for comedy, if anything. But anyway, yeah, I'll at least keep tabs on announcements regarding Arizona Sunshine 2. And then finally, Spider-Man 2, of course. PlayStation fans were waiting and anticipating more news, and we got, I don't know, about, was it like close to 13 minutes, 10 to 13 minutes of Spider-Man 2? I really loved the first game, not at first, but they added lower difficulty options that made me feel like, okay, and now I feel more like a superhero. And I suck at action games, so a good chunk of that's my fault. But it just became much more enjoyable to me once they had those lower difficulty options. Miles Morales, the kind of spin-off pseudo-sequel, had difficulty options that suited me right from the start, and so I'm optimistic that likewise Spider-Man 2 will just launch with those same types of options for a gamer like me. I also got the option, I think maybe even at launch in the original Spider-Man, to skip puzzles. And I hate puzzles. And so skipping that gameplay, awesome. And hopefully there's nothing like the civilian stealth sequences from the first Spider-Man game in Spider-Man 2. I think, did they have any in Miles Morales? I'm thinking maybe they did not. But anyway, I think universally in reviews, those were a negative point. And so hopefully they learned from that and they're not going to have anything like that to pad things out in Spider-Man 2. Man, we saw some cool stuff. We got Spider-Man wearing the black suit with Venom-like tentacle powers and combat abilities. Miles can glide so that there's almost a pseudo-flying element that's added to traversal, and I've really been enjoying the wingsuit in Saints Row 2022, and so that just feels like something I'm ready to continue having in other open city games. Lots of abilities were showcased in this material, so I think that there's going to be a lot to really explore and potentially enjoy. I'm not a fan of the villain Kraven the Hunter. The costume has always looked silly to me in any iteration I've seen of it, and this one barely not silly. It's just there. It's not silly, but I'm still not really taking him too seriously, so they've got an uphill battle to win me over with taking Kraven seriously as a villain. I think we have reason, based on those seeds that were planted near the end of the first game, I think we have reason to think that Kraven is not the big ultimate bad. It's probably going to be one of the Goblin type of villains and or Venom. So I'm not too worried about the game hanging on me taking Kraven seriously, but they've certainly got their work cut out for them. Kurt Connors as the Lizard and the black suit, both of these elements in the story combined seem perfectly poised to give us themes of dealing with the evil inside of us that we find hard or impossible to control. So I think that could very well be a significant theme, but will they play into that theme? And if they do, what will their solution be for dealing with the evil inside of us? That's what I'm going to be watching for, as I likely love the open world Spidey action and hopefully more great storytelling. We'll see. I still don't know if this will be a day one purchase or if I'll try before I buy. But based on the history, I think there's good reason to think it's going to be a really solid experience. So yeah, that's Spider-Man 2. Lots of stuff that looked good, but could certainly also be a lot of empty promises. We'll see what happens, and you know, if and when these games all release, I guess. But those are all of my thoughts for now. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and spread this content around and then of course visit christiangeekcentral.com for tons more content as we continue, as always, to geek out and seek the truth. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.